From the late 1970s up to the present, Manchester has given rise to some great bands. Whether Britpop or rave, Manchester and Manchester bands have led the way. At the centre of the city's emergence as a musical powerhouse is one band, New Order, one record label, Factory, and one club, the Hacienda. This family tree tells the story of New Order, how they began as Warsaw, became Joy Division, survived the death of their singer Ian Curtis, changed their name and sound, and in the process changed the course of pop music. Their story intersects with the history of a host of other Manchester bands, including the Buzzcocks, the Happy Mondays, and Monaco.
To the radio. Oh, I would call out when the going gets tough. Yippee, yippee, I had to crucify some brother today, and I don't dig what you gotta say. Fall in love with someone, ever fallen in love with someone, ever fallen in love with someone you shouldn't fall in love with.
The story starts with the Buzzcocks in the summer of 1976. Two college friends were inspired to put a band together by hearing the Sex Pistols. They were soon joined by two others excited by the new music, had a rehearsal, and immediately gelled.
You put four people in a room, and it just kind of works, the right four people.
I mean, none of us were ashamed about the noise we were making. In fact, I think that's what set us apart from most other people, is that we had no shame. And for us, the more chaotic and absurd it was, the better.
See, the first ever gig we did was, it was about 5 weeks after that first rehearsal that was supporting the Sex Pistols at the Leicester Free Trade Hall in Manchester.
And we just, hit everything we could, and made as much noise as possible, and then we're suddenly talking to all the local kids who were like, wow, we didn't know there was a band in Manchester, It'd been like the winter of the mind for people for years, and suddenly there was a thought,
The gig inspired a lot of people in Manchester.
It's like somebody opening a door in a darkened room. It was really weird. It was just like that was what you wanted to do.
Well, up until punk, you kind of thought to be a pop star you had to be you have some kind of talent that's given to you by a sweep of the hand of God, and then you become this magical guitarist that could play 10,000 notes in 3 seconds. But punk sort of showed us that anyone can do it.
And they were doing it. They were doing what you wanted to do, which was tell the world where to go, like that. And it was just like that. I thought, God, yes, that's it. Freedom.
The reason why I wanted to play drums was I went to see Buzzcocks. I just thought, well, this is it. This is what I want to do. I want to be on stage with Buzzcocks.
Using £1,000 borrowed from friends and family, the Buzzcocks released their own EP, Spiral Scratch. This DIY approach inspired other young punks.
I went and bought the bass guitar because Bernard had a guitar, and I thought, well, 4 strings has to be easier than 6, so that seemed a good way to start. And then we went home and sat in his grand's front room in Broughton in Salford, sort of thinking, what the hell do we do now?
My grandmother had an old sort of 78 gramophone, and I wired 2 quarter-inch jack sockets to the needle of the gramophone. We plugged into the needle of the gramophone.
And we were both going through that with the guitar and the bass, going through it, just playing punk music, and we just wrote all the early stuff like Guts and stuff with no vocals or anything, and just started. And then we were a band, the 2 of us, and we just started looking for everybody else then.
They left a card in the window of the local record shop.
And I got all these lunatics phoning up. I remember one guy, and he arranged to meet him at a pub in Didsbury. And it was this hippie guy, and he had no shoes on, and he had like a cushion cover for a coat on, like an armless sort of cushion cover. And we were in punks, and he was like this hippie. And he got us back to his flat, me and Ucky, and he sat on these cushions. And he had a balalaika, and he started playing this balalaika, and he had a book of poetry. And he was reading out his poetry playing balalaika, and we were sat right in front of him, trying not to laugh, you know.
With Warsaw, things were still fluid. They'd seen a singer, Ian Curtis, around at punk gigs and decided that he might be the man for them.
Because he was quite noticeable because he had like a green flak jacket on with hate on the back in white tape, which we thought was quite interesting.
Became friends with him, and I kind of then met him on the scene. We didn't know he wanted to be a singer. And every time we'd go out then, we'd speak to him and his mates. They were called the two Ians because there was another guy called Ian. He was with him.
And the guy Ian was working with dropped off and he came and joined us.
All they needed was a drummer.
Drummers seem to be arseholes for some reason.
The first drummer we had was Tony Tabac, and he got shopped because he came up with this great scheme of if you sell dope cheaper, you sell more of it. And he never realised that as soon as he did that, all the other dealers just shopped him.
One of them even wanted to bring his girlfriend to gigs. I mean, that's just not on, is it? He went straight away.
And then Steve answered an advert that Ian put in Macclesfield.
They arranged to meet for an audition outside Strangeways Prison in Manchester.
Old Mark II Jag pulls up, you know, it's getting a bit 60s gangsterish this now. And this very young-looking lad gets out, and this other chap, I thought, he said, oh, that's Bernard there, how you Bernard? I thought the other lad was his dad, but it wasn't. That was Ucky.
Yeah, he just came shuffling out of his car very nervously. It was quite funny. Because he no, I shouldn't say that, no. I'm not going to say that. His mother used to dress him. So he always wore very strange clothes.
His personality fitted in with us, and he didn't seem to have any dickhead traits at that point.
I think the fact that I had some tins of drink with me helped. I think I bribed them with Coke and Vimto. So I was in. That was it. I was in Warsaw. Yeah, hey, a punk band.
Warsaw were finding it hard to get gigs because there was another band called Warsaw Pact, which led to all sorts of confusion. The band decided to change their name to Joy Division.
We did our first gig at Pips in Manchester. I remember Ian got thrown out for kicking glass around the dance floor. And we had to beg the bouncers to let him back in. And then we did our first gig, and all my friends from Salford had a huge fight. It was a great night.
I began to suspect that the reason nobody was giving us any gigs was because there was always a fight.
In desperation, Peter Hook went round to see a local promoter.
I'd been trying to pester him for ages, and I said, oh, you know, I'd come about the support gig for Susie and the Banshees, and he went, oh, just give that away. I said, oh, God, I said, who'd you give it to? And he went, Joy Division. I went, oh, that's us. And he went, oh, I mean,
I remember playing a gig in Oldham, and two people turned up, and one of them left because we weren't the band they'd come to see. But we did it anyway.
Joy Division were becoming increasingly frustrated at not getting gigs. The only one they had lined up was the Stiff Chiswick Challenge, a national band competition that had come to Manchester. In the audience were Anthony Wilson, a local TV presenter, and Rob Gretton, a local DJ.
We went on last, and everyone, by the time we went on, it was like 1 o'clock, and everyone had gone home.
we were so wound up, it was like that, you know. Ian went berserk and smashed the table up and was rolling about and broken pint pots at the front of the stage and ripping the stage apart and all this. Like, it really went, you know, because we were just so wound up. And them two must have made an impression.
And that night, watching all the bands, all the Manchester bands of '78 play, and ending up with Joy Division. And Joy Division only played 2 numbers and got the plugs pulled. But, you know, chalk and cheese. There's this lot on stage, and they are completely different from the other 11 bands. And I defined it, I suppose, in my brain that night as they're there because they have to be. You know, this band are on stage, it's inevitable because they have to, because something's trying to get out of them. You know, they're not on stage because they want to be rock and roll stars, because they want to be in this culture, because they think it's fun. They're on stage because they have to be.
As a result of that evening, Rob Gretton became Joy Division's manager. For Anthony Wilson, it only accentuated his frustration with his career in mainstream TV. The final straw was when his music show, So It Goes, was axed.
It was just such an honour to be, you know, connected to this fantastic art form, which I was obsessed with. And suddenly to say no more was just, ooh. And I couldn't really bear that.
To maintain his connection with music, Anthony started a club night called Factory for local bands to play. Then, using a small legacy left to him by his grandmother, he started releasing their records on a label he also called Factory. From the start, it was clear the label would be an unusual business.
Sadly, over the years, none of us has ever had that desire to be rich. You know, we'd really like to be rich, very much. I'd love to be rich. But it's like item 57, you know. Not that I don't want to be rich, but there's like 56 things that come first, you know.
Factory had a talent for spotting and signing local bands, and throughout the 80s became the Manchester record label.
In a way, Factory has always had the band that changes music. Joy Division New Order changed music. The Smiths were wonderful, but they didn't.
Joy Division recorded an album, Unknown Pleasures, and playing live, Ian Curtis's stage presence began to attract attention.
Dance, 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 dance to the radio. Dance, 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 dance to the radio. Dance, 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 dance to the radio. To the radio. Oh, I was call out when the going gets tough.
You know, Ian's sort of commitment and his pushiness, and you could see it in his face. He meant it, and that made you mean it. You know, there was no flippancy about it at all. You know, he really had the power to move people.
Dance, 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 dance to the radio.
Ian would get pissed out of his head on Special Brew. And he'd just be like this demented lunatic with like flaming arms, but it was exciting, really exciting.
Joy Division were at last beginning to attract a following. However, driving back from a gig in London, they began to notice that all was not well with Ian Curtis.
We got near Luton and he just started making this growling sound in the front of the car. And I remember I had the flu and I had a blanket over me, and he kept turning around and pulling the blanket off me, and I said, "What are you fucking doing? Give it." I pull it back, and then he'd pull it off me. I thought he was just messing around and being childish.
And he had been a bit crabby. You know, but he just thought, oh, you know, it's after a gig, a bit of a wild gig, loads of people, you know, shaking your hand and all that lot. And he went very quiet, and then all of a sudden, you know, he was flying about.
You know, punching the windows and the windscreen, punching Steve, who was trying to drive the car at 70 miles an hour down the motorway. And then he just started banging his head against the windscreen. We obviously knew something was wrong. And that was it, really. That was his first epileptic fit. You know, which was beginning of the end, really.
Someone take these dreams away.
Joy Division were poised to leave for their first tour of the United States, but Ian Curtis's health was still causing concern.
This stage was on heavy barbiturates that just kind of really affected his personality. 1 minute he'd be laughing, the next minute he'd be crying. You know, he had it quite strong.
20 years ago or whatever, I don't think they had particularly honed the treatment that they've got now. So I mean, the simple reason that he was ill was he had epilepsy, and they were treating him for it. That got him depression. He had marital problems, and it just all got too much for him. It's quite simple.
We talked him out leaving the band and said, look, just let's take a year off where you recuperate. Take a year off, sort your life out, you know, and then see what happens. As I remember, he wanted to leave the band and go and open a sandwich shop in Plymouth or something. Why did he want to do that? No, it wasn't a sandwich and bookshop in Plymouth. By this time, he'd split up with his wife and he was staying at my house in Salford. I arranged to meet him for a drink on a Saturday night and he didn't turn up. So I went over to a friend's and I got a phone call there. He said, I've got a bit of bad news. I said, what? Talk about an understatement. He said, well, Ian's committed suicide.
The police phoned me up and told me on the Sunday morning that we were going to America that afternoon. We were supposed to be leaving.
Ian's gone. What? What? He's dead.
And the whole room just turned upside down and started spinning like this. And I was in a shock, totally shocked about it. And you know, it's like someone hit you with a sledgehammer. But he had it in his blood, you know. He's one of them guys who had it in his blood.
Ian's death kind of justified, if you like, you know, the gloom and everything. It was like it was the icing on the cake, and that's a really bad thing to say about anybody dying. But it was kind of like, whoa, yes, that's it now. You know, he's gone with the greats. You know, they were miserable. He had a tortured life, and oh God, it must have been hell. And in a way, it kind of like summed up Joy Division to a lot of people. It was just something that's kind of, we understood, really. I mean, we'd always said, you know, if one of us leaves or whatever, you know, we'll carry on. So we just said, so we're carrying on. Yeah, right.
Bernard Sumner took over the vocals, and they decided to change the band name.
Went for a meeting in the pub to change the name. And remember, we had that little shortlist, was the Khmer Rouge, the Witch Doctors of Zimbabwe, and New Order. So me and Bernard voted for New Order, and them three voted for Witch Doctors of Zimbabwe.